thank you for joining us today for the Lunch and Learn series. We are very, very excited and very appreciative of Dr. Fred Schmitt and his team, Ms. Marketa Yarbrough and Mr. Derek Hord, for joining us today from the University of Kentucky. They will be presenting today about healthy brain aging and a faith-based outreach initiative that they've been part of in Kentucky. And I was just telling them, we're really excited to learn more as diversity outreach and inclusion in research is much more recognized as an important aspect of what we do. And as the DVCID protocol is about to become underway at our center and be activated, and as we're doing site initiation, learning more about how to do better work out in the community and to recruit successfully and do outreach in diverse communities is really important part of what we need to be doing as researchers. So thank you so much for taking the time. And with that, I will give the floor to the team.
Okay, so we're going to do this in a very unusual fashion. I'll do a brief introduction to kind of lay the groundwork, and then Mr. Hord will jump in. Big D is as he's known from his days of playing basketball, and then Ms. Yarbrough will jump in, and then I'll do a quick summary. And I wanted to say hi to Dr. Peavy as well, since we've known each other for quite a while. But this is something of an unusual issue in the field of Alzheimer's disease research and recruitment, in that there are people who firmly believe that faith-based outreach is one strong method, particularly for the African American community, and others feel that that is passé. And I think that both are right in the sense that each view is correct depending on where you live. What is the region that where you're recruiting? And we have a unique region, but to keep things in perspective, our effort to recruit participants is that we recruit participants with an eye towards what happens to the brain as it ages. And this is just a nice little slide that we use for our center because we're focused on multi-etiology dementia. And as I spoke weeks ago on Alzheimer mimics, our center, as well as the work by Doug Alasko at your center and others, has led to this understanding that that whole transition of clinical Alzheimer's disease, which we tried to define in the 70s and 80s and 90s, is now being redefined as not just Alzheimer's pathology, but there are other things going on in the brain. So what we try to do is reach out to people who are cognitively normal, functional older adults in our region, and then bring them in for research, hence that little circular thing with the arrows that you see that's there. And the goal is to reach out in particular to the African American community here to educate about healthy brain aging, because as we know from the YCAP studies in New York, that African Americans are at higher risk for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And the way our center is structured is we have a number of projects. Many of you know the ADCS effort now in Down syndrome. We've been studying Down syndrome and Alzheimer's for over a decade. We've studied vascular comorbidities. We have several large projects on small vessel disease and other risk factors. But all of these risk factors, as you will hear, are elevated in the African American community. So when I said that both approaches, faith-based and community-based, I think are valid depending on where you live, you have to take into mind when I took over the outreach effort of our center is that Kentucky is a rather different state. It's not the big city. It's not West Coast big cities, UCSF, UCSD and so on, nor is it Rush or Washington University in St. Louis or any of the New York centers. We're a very rural center, so to speak, in the sense that Lexington is a city of about 325,000 people, and we have to recruit from the state, where the state itself is about 3.5 million individuals. And most of those people are not wealthy people. So these are the 2014 demographics. The state has yet to update these from the Commission on Human Rights, but 13% of our population are old folks over 65. I'm now one of them. Almost a third live alone. And notice the income figures. These are not wealthy people. And we know the socioeconomic status, access to healthcare, and so forth influences your ability to recruit. It's even more critical with the African American community. The estimate nationwide is somewhere between 13 and 15% of the country is African American. And that holds for the country as a whole, but in Kentucky, it's half of that. And it's even less populated by Hispanic Americans, and they're mostly located in the southwestern part of the state. So what's interesting is that you see the two circles, the blue and the red circle. These are our primary outreach areas because this is where more African American families reside. But you also note that there's some of that population that's far west, but that's 4 hours away. So it's very hard to recruit from there. But what's astounding is that the socioeconomic status differences remain, and we have to deal with those in terms of recruitment. And what's fascinating is though, even though in Fayette County, we're at about the national average of 13%, if you look at our catchment area, which is actually surrounded with that large blue dot, only 8.5% of our surrounding area within 2 hours of driving is African American. And if you look at 65 and older, it's actually down to 5%. So within our 2-hour drive, it's very low with surrounding counties. So we have to reach out to Louisville, where there are more African American families residing. And with that effort in mind, we've developed several programs over the years, and you'll hear about those in detail. Our outreach partnership, that purple circle, Derek will talk about that. Ms. Marquita will talk about the healthy churches, and we've had for years a community advisory council. So bearing those things in mind, we've done some unique things. These are all the brainchildren of my two colleagues. When we do outreach, we have an engagement and advisory partnership that tries to leverage, if you will, or interest African American physicians in our recruitment efforts, in both directions, so that the community knows where they can find a provider of color, and providers of color can partner with us. And we've had good success with that. And you'll hear a little bit about that. So what did we used to do? We used to go and do home visits in the African American community. And we did safety screening and we did memory screening. And people said great for one visit. And then they said, that's enough. So we needed to change how we did things. And one of the talents that my colleagues have is they're extremely personable and can talk to people. So what we did to change our approach is develop a new way of doing memory screening on a one-on-one basis, and by using the SAGE, which is a self-assessment of mental status, telephone MOCA, and what's known as the faith-based MEMTRACS, which is a continuous recognition paradigm that can be administered to large groups, like a whole church congregation at once. We've reached out to people to screen, and then if they still have concerns, we provide an individual screen where they can be screened and talk about the outcome and what are the options. And we measure our success based on how many people enroll in our Alzheimer's Center who were age eligible. So this is just a model of that. It's a simplified model of how we do it. but we've had good success with this, with affiliated programs that we surround these events at each church with these large scale events so that the church opens up to us and we can do these individual screens. And you'll hear more from Ms. Marquita about how that's done. So that's the intro. You've seen my face before, obviously. And so Derek will take over, and then Ms. Marquita, and then I'll come back for a little bit of summary.
Okay, sorry about that. And hello from the University of Kentucky and Sanders Brown Center on Aging. I'm going to talk a little bit about an outreach effort that's been very fruitful for Sanders Brown in terms of minority recruitment, research participation, and it's called Memory Sunday. Some of you have probably heard of Memory Sunday, but it's a wonderful program that we've participated in since 2016, 2017. And I guess you say, well, what is Memory Sunday and how did we at Sanders Brown become involved with and incorporate Memory Sunday? Memory Sunday is an annual event usually held on the second Sunday in June. And our goal is to inform as many people as possible on the subject of Alzheimer's disease and memory loss. Due to the impact of Alzheimer's within the African American community, it's crucial to inform as many as we can. So you say, how do we go about doing this? And we thought the best way was through churches and the power of the pulpit. Having the information on memory loss and Alzheimer's disease has an enormous impact when it comes from a pastor or church leader. So that's been vital for us. The idea for Memory Sunday actually came from one of our advisory councils. And it just so happened that an organization called the Balm in Gilead, which some of you may be familiar with, wanted to incorporate memory loss and healthy brain aging as one of their health ministries. They took the Memory Sunday concept and promoted to many more churches than Sanders Brown could ever reach. We feel very fortunate for the partnership and for the growing relationship with the Balm in Gilead. So who is the Balm in Gilead? The Balm in Gilead is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping prevent diseases and improve the health within the African American community by supporting churches and faith institutions. Founder and CEO, Dr. Panessa Seal, began a ministry by addressing AIDS epidemic in Harlem, New York over 30 years ago. So we fast forward to today, and the Balm in Gilead has nearly every health disparity that addresses or impacts the African American community. They address that. And we at Sanders Brown were happy to receive a call from Dr. Seal because she wanted to include healthy brain aging and information on Alzheimer's disease and memory loss. So we are, memory loss and Alzheimer's disease is actually the latest health ministry for their organization. So it takes partnerships and collaboration. In 2016, we began a partnership with the Balm in Gilead, and it's really involved, as did encouragement from Dr. Seal to take our Memory Sunday initiative to the next level. At Sanders Brown, we're actually a core generally made up of 3 people. So to get started, we used the help of our local community advisory partners, which most of them are ardent church members. ADOC is our first community advisory council member, and it was their vision that created Memory Sunday in the first place. So who is ADOC and what do they do? Well, as I mentioned, they're our first community partner. It stands for African American Dementia Outreach Partnership. And that's a mouthful, so that's one of the reasons we just say ADOC. How did they begin? Then and now. ADOC began as a council with 2 groups of people. We had members from the community and we had clergy members. Sanders Brown recognized a long time ago, before the partnership with the Bauman Gilead, the importance of church involvement and church leaders' involvement. And since the inception of ADOC, church involvement and participation has been truly invaluable. As I mentioned, we call them ADOC, but they're officially known as Friends of ADOC Advisory Council. So the group of clergy that helped establish is before you there. And these gentlemen are very influential in Lexington and throughout Kentucky, actually. One of the most effective projects that we were able to accomplish with these ministers was to take this group to the annual Bauman Gilead's conference, Healthy Churches 2020 conference, which is now called 2030, as they feel like there's a long way to go to recognizing and help improve a lot of these health disparities. Since we've taken, since the very beginning of taking this group, we've taken two other groups, pastors and members from our advisory council to that conference. And that effort really began to bear fruit from the first time we did that within our community. That conference is so recognized and so appreciated that the news just spread throughout the state for us. So we saw in earlier slides purpose and objectives. So I don't want to really go over what was already on the slides that much, but there's one objective in particular: culturally tailored faith-based materials, tools, if you will. That's been really key for us. We've been fortunate at Sanders Brown to have had some very, very talented and creative students that work with us, usually on a part-time basis, but they've been able to take ideas from Miss Marquita, Mr. Fred, myself, and really come up with some nice things to distribute within our community. We distribute a lot of material, resource material on a regular basis, but Memory Sunday is really huge for that process. We do that process. We create things in-house. We get things from the Bauman Gilead and from the NIH. We try to do whatever we can to make sure that these people, the churches, have the information that's going to help them make decisions about memory loss and their families. And this is an example of a postcard that was created and we sent out to a lot of our mailing lists. We call our materials the Memory Sunday Toolkit. And the information on the right is called the Book of Alzheimer's, which is contained in our toolkit. The Book of Alzheimer's actually addresses memory loss from a biblical perspective. And it was a project also from our ADOC Council that created this book, this resource material. And by the way, you can download a copy of the Book of Alzheimer's from the Bauman Gilead's website. And we've taken these materials and packaged them in baskets and boxes, decorated boxes and bundles, whatever it takes to get the word out to these churches and to help the churches distribute it to their congregations. Most of the churches will take this material, and on Memory Sunday, they'll set up a resource table so that their congregation can come by and see and hopefully take some of these materials. What you see on the left is a flyer that we helped distribute for one of our churches. And if you'll look at it, you'll notice that it says Memory Weekend. Not all of our churches worship on Sunday. Some worship on a Saturday. So we didn't want to exclude anyone. And we kind of morphed, if you will, the Memory Sunday idea into Memory Weekend as well. And on the right side is an example of just some of the benefits that we've reaped from the Memory Sunday event. We've actually held seminars in churches with physicians and ministers speaking on behalf of healthy brain aging and the Memory Sunday event. Now, what you see here is we've contacted many, many churches, and here you have a group of people from different churches that are planning their Memory Sunday and resource material pickup. So it's a pretty organized event, especially in the Louisville area, because we have an awful lot of churches that participate in the Louisville area. So they'll plan this, and then come back later. You'll have even more members come back and get the baskets or the boxes of the materials. I mentioned a resource table, and this is an example of a table that's actually set up in the sanctuary of one of our churches. Now, the pastor here in this church was really committed to making sure his congregation would see the material and be informed. So we were pleased that some of our churches really go to full extent to make sure this information is distributed. And these are our ADOP Advisory Action Council members, and they're serving at the resource table to help distribute, answer questions about some of the materials. And again, I mentioned that not every church can do it on the second Sunday, can hold Memory Sunday on the second Sunday in June. So if you feel like you want to participate and you have a church that can't participate on that second Sunday, don't be discouraged. Just recommend that they find another date, even if it's not in June, and be sure to try to secure a commitment. So, and finally, this is some of the major benefits of Memory Sunday. Memory Sundays has helped establish a rapport positive enough that 2 of our churches in the Louisville area actually hold research participant clinics. As I mentioned, these are churches in Louisville, and they had so much interest that they allow Sanders Brown Clinical Corps to bring our personnel and actually do the research or studies that they're participating in. The reason we do this is Louisville is well over an hour from Lexington, and it's it's difficult for some of our participants to find transportation back and forth due to their age and maybe health reasons. So we brought the clinic to them, and we made it happen. And we feel very blessed to be able to do that and have that participation. So I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to share with you some of the things that we do at Sanders Brown. And if there are questions later, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Minimizing. Okay, there we go. I can see what you're doing, Dr. Fred. And I will begin, as I said just a moment ago, to talk briefly about the Healthy Churches of Kentucky. The Healthy Churches of Kentucky Coalition, it gives us an opportunity to go into the community and begin to develop partnerships that could meet the needs of the church as it relates to health disparities, including brain health. And our goal is to cultivate relationships rather than just meeting our needs of research recruitment. The next slide, Dr. Fred. I'll be talking about what a healthy church coalition could look like, resources to create a church coalition, and the how-tos in assisting churches in partnering with community organizations and health professionals. We help to plan culturally appropriate events and programs and strategies in addressing the health disparities that impact the health status of the church and the local community. And I'm eager to talk to you about our engagement and would like to hear your thoughts and questions at the end. Next slide, please. Next, okay. The Healthy Churches of Kentucky is a coalition of churches that we assist in educating, implementing, and evaluating the outcomes of programs that have been created to hopefully be sustainable and in the improvement of the health status of the communities. And our efforts include leveraging community resources and partnerships with the local healthcare providers, also to support local church development and sharing of those resources for reducing the health gaps in that community. So we go right to the church to actually facilitate a program like this. The next slide. The Healthy Churches of Kentucky was developed again in partnership with the Balm and Gilead. They have been very instrumental in giving us ideas and suggestions, as Derek mentioned, that they have been around for 30 years engaging in church outreach and addressing disparities in the African American community. In our effort to model a similar program, we developed a coalition of pastors committed to engaging the congregation in measurable activities that were health-oriented. Next slide. The Healthy Churches of Kentucky are designed to basically, we do assist, support, and implement. We also share the importance of how spiritual health can be related to physical well-being. We provide support by organizing brain health related events that could include community health partners to help characterize the physical health status of the church. Next slide. What we do is we go into the church. We take, as Derek mentioned, our team, and we share, we offer a health assessment, and it's completely voluntary. And we, again, have come together with the pastors and get their buy-in to say, we want to do something about the health status of our church. And so therein lies where we continue to work with the community partners and say, hey, we want to come in and we want to just get a snapshot of what it could possibly look like, what the health status of your church is, not only just for us to to share brain health information, but we really care about the community. So we want to involve community partners to actually engage in addressing things like blood. We do blood pressure checks and look at blood cholesterol and glucose and weight and BMI. And those are things that people are really interested in, even if they're not so much as impacted by Alzheimer's disease or brain health issues. And if you could go to the next slide. And this is a snapshot of what our health survey looks like. It's a basic questionnaire about one's general health diagnosis. And it just asks basic questions, but we use that as a tool to sort of let the pastor know what people have voluntarily said that they're concerned with or have been diagnosed with. And the next slide. And as I mentioned before, that health survey is completely anonymous. And we use that to just, again, create something like this. This is an example of actually analyzing that health survey. And what we determined here, you may notice that hypertension had been a big thing in that church. So the Sanders Brown Center on Aging facilitates and coordinates that initial event with other community partners, and we offer suggestions as to how to create sustainable wellness programs that would address hypertension. And that also, I have been informed, can have an impact on your brain health and Alzheimer's disease. The next slide. We also provide some little handy, we come into the church community and we bring materials that hopefully would be valuable to them. And one of the wellness programs that we actually facilitate is a Know Your Numbers campaign. And that's, again, if you'll go to the next slide, it gives us details about healthy aging, and we'll be able to document, if you go to the next slide. Sorry, you're able to document and have a handy guide for yourself to share with your family care physician on what your cholesterol levels were, what your blood pressure was the last time you had it checked, And when was the last time you had a memory screen? And what were the results? And then you have that handy guide always with you to even document your medications and your dosages, just to share, and that becomes interesting to those that participate, because there's something that they can have hands-on, and it helps them to be aware of where they are and those numbers that are so important to our primary care physicians. Next slide. Our Know Your Numbers campaign, we sort of customize it for a particular church. And the last time we actually facilitated that program, something very basic as a water challenge. We came in with water bottles, and we had our community partners, those who the health department was able to take the blood pressures for us. We also had a nutrition specialist come in and talk about eating, proper ways to eat, and help support those that were challenged with diabetes, and those great memory screens that we sit down in an area and take about 10 minutes to offer and sort of get a gauge on where people are in their memory and thinking, very basic memory screens. So those are things, again, that can involve the entire church. It doesn't just have to be the senior population. And it also shows that we care about everyone in the church, and it's giving them something back. And on the left is just the flyer. We certainly create materials to talk about the when, where, and what it is, so that it can be distributed. And then the last church we did, they opened it up to the community. It wasn't just their church. They shared with the community to come in, participate in our water challenge and other fitness programs. We've even suggested that maybe the churches would do walking Bible studies. And we also, very important here, is we recommend that they consult their primary care provider before engaging in any activities. The next slide. Okay. And this shows the collaboration that it takes for us to pull something like that off. Our clinic team comes in and they do the blood draw to check the levels on those various things like cholesterol and blood glucose. But we also include other groups like the Links Sisters. They came in and helped distribute the survey. We want to bring in community partners to make the community as a whole be involved. And it also helpful to us because we, again, get the opportunity to build partnerships. And the next slide. And we support the church's program with outreach tools, flyers, social media announcement that detail information about the community partners that participate. And we coordinate and support local churches in the development of sharing resources and strategies for reducing the health gaps. And this at the same time helps us to build partnerships as a coalition of churches. One, for example, we worked with the Central District, which involves several different churches that are under one umbrella. So that gives us an opportunity to reach a larger group at one time while also giving something back to the community along with our partners. This is one outreach tool that we use. And as Derek had mentioned, it has involved lots of opportunities where we get to go in one-on-one with the church and sit down and say, this is what you're looking at. We want to help you make connections with other healthcare providers in the community. And so there are so many ways to modify the design for culturally specific programs that highlight brain health while addressing other health disparities within the church. Our health, there are other ways, as we saw in the previous slide. It doesn't always have to be fitness. There can be health-related sermons. We get the pastors to talk about things that were identified and hopefully in a sermon or when the churches come together. We also try to help the church develop health ministries. And we also have the great opportunity to invite health professionals in if the churches are interested. We try to pull groups together, physicians that would come in and talk about the specific needs that might have been identified in that health analysis. So our hope is that the collaboration would help to motivate and educate the congregations about lifestyle choices, which could reduce the risk of negative health outcomes. And I hope that I've shared some ideas that may help some to begin thinking about ways that you can support brain health in your local communities and customize your programs. And that concludes my portion. Thank you, Dr. Fred, for the slide control.
Indeed, very nice. You know, what's interesting in all of these projects and programs is that the willingness of the churches to engage in these activities. The very fact that one of our pastors' churches that did the water challenge, he kept mentioning, and I can't remember what part of the Bible, but fit for the kingdom was his refrain. And he himself lost 10 pounds, joined our ADRC, and joined an additional affiliated research project. That's motivation. And he brings that back to his congregation so that anyone 65 and over can be motivated, if you will, in these areas. And I think that in and of itself is quite impressive to know. The other thing that is just to give you my warped sense of humor, as I'm getting ready to figure out which screen I'm going to share here, is in essence, here we go. No, that's not it. I've got too many screens open. There we go. Is that years ago, I was offered, when I was in high school, a scholarship to become a Lutheran minister, which I turned down, needless to say. And yet here I am 50 years later, working with the churches. And as I always tease the pastors, who are very cordial, I always tell them that I feel out of place being a Lutheran surrounded by Baptists. And it's true, I do at times. But based on what you've heard so far, the big question is what impact has this had? And I'm going to just give you some highlights of how the program has impacted the Kentucky church community, particularly with African Americans. So when Memory Sunday was initiated, not only was the Book of Alzheimer's and the Toolkit available through the Balm and Gilead and available through our ADRC, but it also was available through ADIR. So NIA has copies as well. And what we discovered locally is that there were more than 600 people who downloaded this information. Pretty impressive. And they share this information. 95% of the churches, and I'll show you some of the church participation, distributed these materials as you saw in Derek's presentation, having those tables of information from NIA about healthy aging, Alzheimer's disease, as well as our local research efforts, including clinical trials. And what's even amazing is that almost half do special events specifically for caregivers within the church community. And that's often a question that I field from pastors. For instance, I had one pastor approach me saying, how do I deal with a member of my congregation who on Saturday was sitting in her car for 3 hours thinking it was Sunday? She's 85 years old. She was confused why nobody was there. And her reaction was just to sit there thinking she had gotten the time wrong during the day, not just the time of day, but the day of the week. And she had had a number of issues, and we were able to work with the family. The other thing that's impressive is that a good third partner with their local public health or other community organizations once we've raised their awareness. And this is important because of the stigmas, as you all know, associated with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. What's also fascinating is that the Memory Sunday effort is not just Alzheimer's now. It also focuses on other health disparities in the African American community: head trauma, epilepsy, stroke. All of those, including Parkinson's, all of those have higher rates in the African American community. So Alzheimer's was the first step, and this allows us to address other disorders. Now, given that, excuse me, given that 2020 was not a good year, although we still had Memory Sunday, it was all virtual. I wanted to give you a sense of how it grew from its original concept to what it can be, hopefully, tomorrow or next year as things settle down a bit. And you can see our catchment area in the blue and kind of orange region there. And you can see what the breakdown is. You heard Derek mention that there are a lot of churches in Louisville that are involved. And you can see the growth. It's almost doubled. Imagine that each church alone has 100 congregants. Some are much larger. But you can see that by 2019, if it's just 100 people in each congregation, we're reaching 4,000 to 5,000 people who of all ages, which is important because you want the toolkit even includes guidance for Sunday school age children. So you want that outreach, you want the information to move out, and lo and behold, we recently had a number of people who we did not personally screen, but spoke with others who had been in our programs, who had signed up for research and actually signed up on their own. So that word of mouth, the fact that we're not ogres, we're doing things that gives back to the community is one of the keys. In the old days, everybody talked about trust, trust, trust. It's more than that. It's giving back, taking that interest. But you can see that growth. And the outlying church that's part of Memory Sunday is where in, I think, Marquita, was Virginia or something?
Yeah, it was, I guess we got reached through the Balm of Gilead. They asked us, what do we do? How can we do this? And we sent materials, so.
Exactly. So very fascinating. And I forgot I didn't do this, so let me come back online here. So you saw our outreach model that goes with Healthy Churches and Memory Sunday, but what is the impact? What is the impact for people who go through these programs, who actually get a memory screen as part of the screens? And you can see that 1 in 4 generally will sign up for our Alzheimer's Center. That's pretty impressive. And again, that's not me who's doing it. It's Ms. Marquita and Derek, Big D. This is the impact, as well as members of our clinical core. So COVID kind of knocked the starch out of our effort, but it really does point to how, particularly in a state that considers itself Southern, how faith makes a difference. And again, I think people who think that faith-based outreach is not the way to go don't realize that the church has been the cornerstone, the rock, to use that phrase, for older African Americans. They're not the younger generation that may be less involved in the church. These are elders who've been there, and the church has helped them along the way. And their faith drives their participation.
Yes.
And it's just a fascinating experience, to say the least, to do these screens. It's amazing to me. So with that, we have time for questions and answers. Well, thank you again. So stay safe, everybody, and get your booster along with your flu shot.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's terrific.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you.